Hi there, I'm Barry Barnes. I've written a new book called Everything I Know About Business I Learned from the Grateful Dead, and I'd like to take a couple of minutes here and talk to you about that. When I tell people I've written this book, sometimes I get some strange questions or some unusual looks, and questions like, a book about the Grateful Dead in business? How weird. Or, why did you write a book about the Grateful Dead? Or, what lessons did you learn from the Grateful Dead? So, I'd like to tell you some of those things right now. First, business and the Grateful Dead. What relevance do they have together? Well, if you look at the economy today and you look at the unemployment rate, you realize that things aren't working out the way we'd like them to in terms of business. The formulas that we've relied on to succeed and sustain our businesses just aren't working. Yet when we look at the Grateful Dead, we saw that this was an organization that existed in a very turbulent industry, the record industry, which is continuing to change and decline and reinvent itself. The Grateful Dead seemed to work outside of that somehow or other, and were successful for 30 years, providing amazing customer service, providing amazing concerts around the country and in Europe and Egypt. Amazing organization, and that's what I want to talk to you about, is how did they do this business-wise? How could they create an organization that sustained themselves and succeeded for 30 years? And then they had this unique business model, which is imitated and followed by many of the jam bands today. It's really becoming the industry model in the music industry, and that is touring rather than selling records. The record business is just about in the tank, and the Grateful Dead knew this in advance. They couldn't sell records very well, so they sold tickets. That's what they did extremely well. So this book talks about how did they do that? How did they enlist the fans to come and see their shows? So bottom line, in terms of business and the Grateful Dead, they provide something fresh in the 21st century. Somehow or other, they seem to anticipate a number of the trends that are going on today in the internet age. Before there was an internet age, they understood social media. They understood viral marketing. They understood the freemium model. And one of the things that they also understood very well was corporate social responsibility. They gave back to the community. So these are some of the reasons that this book is relevant, I believe, today, the lessons that I point out in the book. Now, why me? Well, I spent 20 years in corporate America, so I was a business guy. I had an MBA, so I understood some things about how to run a business, supposedly, but I was also an entrepreneur. I owned a record store when records were in vogue in the early and mid-70s, and I was a DJ on an FM station, a rock FM station in Kansas City for a number of years as well. So I have this business background that helps me understand what the Grateful Dead were doing. But I was also a Deadhead. So I saw them for 21 years in concert. First one in Des Moines, Iowa in '74, last one in St. Louis in '95. I saw 194 shows, recorded 189 of them. And in the 20th anniversary shows at the Greek Theater in 1985, I had this aha moment that said, Barry, you need to study this. You need to understand what it is that they're doing, how they can have this business that allows them to tour so successfully. When you see this amazing teamwork and creativity and leadership and customer service, all these things coming together, you need to tell that story. So I quit my job, went back to school, earned a PhD in business, and I began to do research on the Grateful Dead. I wanted to have this Grateful Dead as my study when I earned my PhD. That just didn't work out. But I did, since then, I have written papers about their logistics and their customer loyalty and their teamwork and their strategic improvisation and their leadership model. So I'm a scholar, I'm a Deadhead, and I'm a businessman all together, and that's what gives me, I think, some unique qualifications to write this book. In terms of the lessons that you'll find in this book, there's 10 of them. The first 3, I think, are most perhaps important, and I'll share those with you right now. Strategic improvisation. I think I could say that after all the times I've said it. But anyway, it's how do you have a business organization can be nimble, change on a dime, adapt, adjust to change, and so forth. Well, the business model of the Grateful Dead was modeled on their band. They were a band first before they were a business, and improvisation was the name of the game for the band as well as we well know it. And so they created this amazing improvisational business model as well that allowed the business to adapt, adjust, and change in real time, respond to crises as they arose instead of waiting for a task force to come in and solve the problem. Live your values is the second chapter in the book, the second lesson, and certainly the Dead lived their values consistently, and the same, they were transparent about their values. What was important to them were those 60s psychedelic values from the Bay Area. They were formed by the Beats before the 60s, and they were formed also by the Acetes and Ken Kesey. This is what the Grateful Dead stood for: peace, love, and harmony, and its most basic, I suppose. By living those values and being consistent with those values for the whole time that they were performing for 30 years, they attracted like minds of the Deadheads, of folks that would work for them. We knew what we were going to get when we dealt with the Grateful Dead. In corporate America, it seems like the only value is the bottom line. Not true with all businesses, but enough of them that we see this distrust of corporate America right now so strongly in the U.S. The third lesson is be kind to your customers. And if you're watching this video and you're a deadhead, then you understand how the Grateful Dead could be really kind to us. They made it easy. They made us part of the family. They reached out to us with an almanac, with newsletters, with free records on occasion, and they made it simple. As opposed to being a means to an end like corporate America, customers for the Grateful Dead were an end in themselves. We were part of the family. That's the bottom line for the Grateful Dead. They wanted to play live music for us. That's what they did. Some of the other lessons I cover in the book are how do you create a business tribe like the Deadheads, and why is that important today? How do you insource rather than outsource? What about sharing your content, like the music and like the logos that they had? And what about sharing leadership and sharing power? Some of these are some of the lessons that you'll find that in Everything I Know About Business, I learned from the Grateful Dead. Thanks for watching.